Moses is speaking. If you're looking at your map, somewhere up here around number 16, 15, 16, near the Jordan River on the plains. It's described as the plain of Moab. We're not technically in Moab anymore. This is territory that used to belong to Moab that was taken over by someone else, and then Israel defeated that someone else. We'll talk about that more later. But it has been 40 years since they have left Egypt, traveled across the Red Sea, had all of their experiences getting to Mount Sinai, where they stayed for 11 months, and then traveled up to Kadesh Barnea, and that's where they sent the spies. We're going to be in chapter 2. Chapter 2. Just trying to figure out where we got to. And so when the 12 spies came back with the report, they did not choose to go into the land. They were murmuring, accusing God of bringing them out to kill them. And so God punished them by telling them that generation, they'd taken a census, so they knew the exact head count of everyone in military service, 20 years and up, that none of them were going to survive. They'd all die in the wilderness. And so now at this point, that punishment has been served, and so they are just about to where they can go into the land, and Moses is the last of that generation still alive, and so he is given this final conversation, speech, declaration to this new generation who's risen up, and he's reminding them what they've gone through. And so at the end of chapter 1, he had just finished reminding them about how they, or really their parents, had failed to enter the land, and they had been told to go wander in the wilderness. And so verses 1, 2, and 3 are the shortest summary you're going to get of 38 years. We turned, so they left from where they were supposed to be going in, entering the land 38 years ago, but they didn't. And took our journey into the wilderness by the way of the Red Sea. Remember when we're talking about the expression by the way, we're talking about path, and generally it's named for what's at the other end, the destination. So the way of the Red Sea is you're heading back towards the Red Sea. So if you're at Kadesh Barnea, you're going back towards the Red Sea. Okay? As the Lord spake unto me, and we compassed Mount Seir many days. So compass could mean surround, it could be on the edge of, but the idea is that they were in a holding pattern for a long time out here in the wilderness, many days. Well, how many? 38 years of them. And then finally the Lord spake unto me, saying, Ye have compassed this mountain long enough, turn ye northward. And then he's going to tell them that they are going to pass through Edom. All right, so your companion text, if you want to go back and reread the play-by-play, would be Numbers chapter 20, verses 1 through 13. And you probably can't see it because I've got it off the screen over there a little bit. Move it over a little. There are several events that occurred in Numbers 20 before they're given instruction about going through Edom, and that aren't mentioned here. One is they came into the wilderness of Zin. You can see that on your map right here near Kadesh. There's some debate whether Kadesh is the same as Kadesh Barnea. I think it is. But that's where Miriam died. So we're in the 40th year, in the first month. They get to the wilderness of Zin. They camp there. And at some point after that, Miriam passes away. They had run out of water. They're getting ticked at Moses. This is not the first time they've run out of water. But nearly 39 years ago, Moses had been instructed to smite a rock, and you have those waters gush out, as you can see on the back of that other map. And so here he was instructed to speak to a rock, and he popped off and whacked the rock and upbraided the people about must he and Aaron, because they were mad at him and Aaron, accusing them of, bringing them out into the wilderness to die. And so for his, hasty words, God, gave him a sentence that he was not going to be permitted to come into the land either. All right, this is less than a year of when Joshua's actually going to lead them in. All right, so he's survived this whole time without that hanging over his head, and now at the end, he's popped off. So that goes on. He speaks, and then they start on their journey to enter Canaan from the east. Okay, so you see the Dead Sea there. You're right over here in Kadesh Barnea. The spies, I think I got a map where the spies, let's see. There you go. Kadesh Barnea. Let's see, man. Kadesh Barnea, and the spies just went north, and they looked through the country, and they went all the way up Sea of Galilee, way north, right? So if you were planning an invasion, wouldn't you just go north, right? Well, God's not going to permit them to go fight at that spot, right? That was where he had told them to do it the first time, and they said no. So now he's making them take the long way around. They've got to go. Originally, you're going to be instructed to go through Edom, through Moab, around over here to Jordan, and come in from the east, okay? That's what they're going to do, but it's not going to be just as simple as passing through these countries, because you have this army. I mean, they've got their wives and children and cattle, but you've got an army, a standing army, a moving army of 600,000 men. If you had 600,000 people show up at the Mexican border armed and say, we'd like to pass through and go to Canada, what do you think the government would say? Right? They would be a little suspicious. And that's exactly what happens here. So they start heading east from, here you go, about point 12 from Kadesh, and they're going to go, with the plan is to go through Edom. Let's see if I can find a different map. All right. Grains of salts on this map. The exact borders for Edom aren't known, and if you look at 12 different maps, you're going to see 12 different borders. But okay, for your point of reference, this is Kadesh Barnea right here. This is the Dead Sea, all right? And yeah, you've got a mountain chain running down from the Dead Sea down to the Red Sea. All right? That's consistent on all your maps, that mountain chain. So they sent a note over to Edom, Moses did, saying, hey, we would like permission to pass through your land. And this is what we get here in verse 4 of Deuteronomy 2. We commanded the Lord's instructions. You are to pass through the coast of your brethren, the children of Esau, which dwell in Seir. They shall be afraid of you. Take good heed unto yourselves, therefore. Meddle not with them. For I have not given you of their land, no, not so much as a foot breadth. I was making a joke with Megan, why do we still use the empirical system measuring in feet? It's biblical. He hasn't given you a centimeter. No, he hasn't given you so much as a foot breadth of their land. All right, this was land that God was not giving to Israel, but it was reserved for Edom. Remember, Edom is the descendant of Jacob's twin brother Esau. All right.
Have they ever been in captivity at this point?
Had Edom?
Had Edom ever been in captivity?
No, in fact, they were a dominating force because they had conquered the original inhabitants, even though the original inhabitants included giants.
Right. I was thinking about that.
So they were instructed to just go straight through.
That was the instruction. You may go through, and even though afraid of you, don't whoop them. Don't fight them. Don't do nothing. And be on your best behavior. You pay for your water. You pay for your food. You go by the main road. You don't go scurrying down the side paths where you're going to tear up stuff with all your cattle. So that's what it says in 6. You shall buy meat of them for money that you may eat. You shall buy water of them for money that you may drink. For the Lord thy God hath blessed thee in all the works of thy hand. He knoweth thy walking through this great wilderness. These 40 years the Lord thy God hath been with thee, and thou hast lacked nothing. He's like, you're not starving. You're not going to, suddenly have great need that you have to spoil this country. You've been provided for. This is not your land. You better obey. Okay, so that was the instruction. And we don't get the rest of the story there in Deuteronomy because it's a recap. But if you go back and you read the companion text in Numbers 20, verses 14 through 29, you'll see that there's this exchange back and forth where Moses will send messengers unto Edom to the king saying, hey, we would like permission to pass through. And this basically just saying this. We'll go by the main road. We'll pay for food and water. We won't tear anything up. And the king sends back a message that says, no. Moses sends a follow-up saying, please, we would like to go through. We'll behave. And the king not only sends back a no, he brings his army to the border. So it's an emphatic, no, you are not. And if you try to come in, we will fight you. Now, God had just instructed them, you aren't to mess with them, don't meddle with them, don't fight them. And so they have to go around Edom. And so on this map here, where exactly the border is, again, I don't know, but they're going to have to go all the way down to the Red Sea to get around Edom. Go back to the other map. Nope, not that one. So if this is indeed Mount Hor over here, we're going around their border. There's a road labeled there.
The green line is Edom.
That's what this map is conjecturing. How broad it is, I don't know. But
Seir is part of Edom.
Yes, Mount Seir is associated with Edom. And in fact, when Esau came out to meet Jacob, he already lived in Mount Seir. And he said, yo, come see me. And he's like, yeah, okay. And we don't ever read that he actually did. But Seir and Edom are synonymous terms. Just like if you're reading Jerusalem and Judea, those are sometimes used interchangeably. So anyway, there would have been a much shorter route going through Edom. You got various roads, but they were not permitted to. And the army from Edom came out and explicitly said no. So what they've got to do is they've got to go around, and they've got to go a long way back down towards the Red Sea. Part of this wandering, so they're feeling like they're having to backtrack, which they are. And so one of the things that's not mentioned here is that this is when the people get really angry about the trip, and they start murmuring against Moses and against God and Aaron, and the Lord's going to send those fiery serpents. Right? And you have the bronze serpent that was lifted up. That's when it comes into play, when they are in the process of looping around Edom. One other thing. Wherever Mount Hor is exactly located, we know that it's located on the border of Edom at that time. So where exactly that mountain is located today is unclear. But wherever it is, the Bible says it was on the border of Edom. So they were, again, skirting the border. They moved from Kadesh Barnea as the company down to Mount Hor. Let's just assume it's here for this map's purposes. And so they had left Kadesh, and by the time they got to Mount Hor, you've got some passage of time. They had arrived in Zin in the first month of the 40th year, and then Miriam died. By the 5th month of that same year, that's when Aaron's going to die. So you got the 3 siblings, the last of that generation. 2 are now dead. Aaron being the high priest, and he's actually going to be buried up on Mount Hor. His son Eleazar is going to go up. He's going to get draped in the new high priest garb. He comes down. And then they stay there for 30 days mourning him. So that's going to get you to the 6th month of the 40th year. And Deuteronomy started in the 11th month. So it's not a lot of passage of time now. These are relatively recent events from what Moses is now speaking to. Okay? That all make sense? There's one other fun feature, which is in Numbers 21, that sometime in this interval between Kadesh Barnea and Mount Hor, whether while they're camped there mourning or not, some guy from farther up into Israel, a king who lived in the southern portion of Canaan, brought his army down and attacked the host.
What verse?
That's in Numbers chapter 21. It's not mentioned in Deuteronomy, but number 21, verses 1 through 3. And he kind of had a surprise victory. He took some prisoners. And so Israel would pray to the Lord and vow a vow at the same time, saying, Lord, if you will give these guys into our hands, we promise we won't take their cities captive. We'll destroy them all. And so they went and they fought against him, and they destroyed that king and all of his cities and didn't leave anybody alive. So they completed their vow, and they named that place Hormah, which this map puts way up here. So maybe it was a long campaign that far north, maybe it was farther south. Don't know. But either way, that was something that occurred in that time period when they had not made it around Edom yet. Right. So we're going to loop around Edom, going down to the city that's mentioned down here is Elath. How do we know Elath is on the Red Sea? Well, the Bible tells us that. If you read 1 Kings 9:26, you don't have to flip there, I'll read it to you. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion-Geber, which is beside Elath, on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. So you've got two data points. The Ezion-Geber is a famous port where Solomon made his ships for his navy. It's on the Red Sea, and that town of Elath or Elath is right next door. So, all right. So along that way, you've got the fiery serpent scene, and then in Numbers 21, you are going to compass around Edom, and you're going to go this path of the wilderness. So you're going to kind of swing wide out into the uninhabited territory to approach Moab from the east. So let's get us a different map that shows Moab. Well, that's really farther north. Let's go. Okay.
But you said uninhabited.
When it uses the term wilderness of, then that's, there's not cities and things out there. You're just kind of in a deserted place.
What country was it?
It would be beyond kind of Edom's borders, just kind of like desert out there that no one's really occupying it because it's such, just like we looked at the satellite imagery, it's desert. Yeah. So, get over here. The eastern wilderness is how this map describes it on point 13, and then goes up towards Moab, which is going to be bordered by the Zered, Brook of Zered, and the Arnon River. So, all right. So verse 8, it says, When we had passed by from our brethren, the children of Esau, which dwelt at Seir, through the way of the plain, from Elath, and from Ezion-Geber, so all the way down to the Red Sea, we turned and passed by the way of the wilderness of Moab. So we're going this wilderness route, taking us up towards Moab. Not the straight route, not the King's Highway, right? Because they didn't have permission. So having to take the roundabout way. And then they get very similar instructions for the nation of Moab. The Lord said unto me, Distress not the Moabites, neither contend with them in battle, for I will not give thee of their land for possession, because I have given Ar unto the children of Lot for a possession. I believe Ar is their capital city. The Amims dwelt therein in times past. All right, we'll look at that in just a second. A people great and many and tall as the Anakims, which were also accounted giants as the Anakims, but the Moabites called the Amims. All right, so fun words for giants. The word giant goes back to the Rephidim. That was among the people that Abraham in Genesis 15 was specifically said, you're going to be able to conquer. 15:20 lists of the Jebusites and all these different things, including that was the Rephidim. So that's what the word giant goes back to. The word Amims means terrors, right? So it's the scary name for these really tall, strong guys. That was what, the Moabites called them. The Horims dwelt in Seir. I don't think I looked up what that one meant. Before time, but the children of Esau succeeded them, and they destroyed them from before them, and dwelt in their stead, as Israel did unto the land of his possession, which the Lord gave unto him. So you had these groups of giant, tall guys who had conquered in the land that would later become Edom. Same in Moab, and I believe in Arnon too, and in Canaan. And so Edom had displaced their giants, and they're now the controlling party. The Moabites had displaced their giants, and they're now the controlling party. All right, remember Moab and Ammon were cousins. No, they were kin. They were both from Lot's two sons. Right? You had the incestuous relationships with his daughters. You had the two children produced, and so those two nations are related to Abraham through his nephew. So, Edom was reserved for Esau's descendants, Jacob's twin brother, and Moab and Ammon are reserved for Lot's descendants. All right, so now arise, said I, and get you over the brook Zered, and we went over the brook Zered. All right, so here you've got on your map a brook that's labeled Zered, whether that's exactly it or not, but it's probably pretty close because it's one of the borders for entering into Moab. All right, so you get a passage of time explained here. The space in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we were come over the brook Zered was 38 years, until all the generation of the men of war was wasted out from among the host, as the Lord sware unto them. So when they had first left Kadesh, when they failed to go in at the spies, poor report, to wandering in the desert, to then crossing this brook, as they're getting close to Moab, is when you'd had a 38-year passage of time. That makes sense? We have to remember, why 38 years? Well, there had been events that had occurred before Kadesh, where you go into Sinai, the 11 months you're at Sinai, leaving, going to Kadesh, and there's also going to be some events that occur after, before they're going to go into the land, including conquering a couple of nation states. All right. For indeed the hand of the Lord was against them to destroy them from among the host until they were consumed. Against who? Yeah, these were the disobedient, unbelieving Israelites of that previous generation who had refused to go in. So it came to pass that when all the men of war were consumed and dead from among the people, that the Lord spake unto me, saying, Thou art to pass over through Ar, the coast of Moab, this day. So whoever the last one to kick the bucket was had finally kicked the bucket, and now they're permitted to go over. And when thou comest nigh against the children of Ammon, distress them not, nor meddle with them. All right, so you've got Lot's other son. Let's see if I can't find a map that shows those guys. Okay, so this is a little farther. There you go. So you got the brook Zered. Again, you're not going through Moab. You're kind of going around the border. And this would be, all right. So we're getting over here to the Arnon River. And there's a limitation placed on not messing with Ammon, which is farther to the northeast. All right. When thou comest nigh against the children of Ammon, distress them not, nor meddle with them, for I will not give them of the land of the children of Ammon any possession, because I have given unto the children of Lot possession. That also is accounted the land of giants. Giants dwelt there in old time. The Amorites called them the Zamzuzzims. Let's see if I looked up that name. Zamzuzzim, plotters, or intriguers. The Anakims mean the long necks. So you got all the local names for these big, strong, dangerous fellows. But Moab had beaten theirs, Ammon had beaten theirs. All right. And these were a people great and many and tall as the Anakims, but the Lord destroyed them before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead. So the Lord was, giving these lands, blessing Moab and Ammon as well, as he did to Esau, which dwelt in Seir, when he had destroyed the Horims, again, those are the giants, before them, and they succeeded them and dwelt in their stead unto this day. Then it lists some of the other original inhabitants that were in Seir. All right, just to keep up with the confusion. All right, we're going back to Edom and explaining some of the folks they displaced. And the Avims, which dealt in Hazarizim, and Azah, and the Caphtorims, which came forth out of Caphtor, and destroyed them and dwelt in their stead. All right, so that's closing your parentheses. All right, so the given instructions again: rise ye up, take your children, and pass over the river Arnon. All right, so the Arnon River was the northern border of Moab. I think that was probably on the original map. Yeah, see that line near Gibeon? So you got the northern border of Moab. That's where you're crossing over. Behold, I have given into thy hand Sihon the Amorite, the king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it, and contend with him in battle. This day will I begin to put the fear of thee, the dread of thee, and the fear of thee unto the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear report of thee, and shall tremble and be in anguish of thee. All right, so wherever exactly Heshbon is, this map has it right about here. You know, there was an Amorite king who had come over, conquered this land that had used to belong to Moab, and now he's ruling, and Lord saying, yes, you have permission to fight this guy. And I'm doing it for a purpose. I am going to have your reputation precede you. And they will be, fearing and dreading and trembling in anguish. Now, Moses sends the same message that he sent to the others. Give me permission to pass through. I won't go anywhere else. You buy me, I'll buy food and water. I sent messengers out of the wilderness of Kedemoth unto Sihon, king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, let me pass through this land. I will go through the highway, that's the main road. I will turn neither right hand nor left. Thou shalt sell me meat for money, that I may drink, and give me money, give me water for money, and I may drink. Only I will pass through on my feet. As the children of Esau, which dwelt in Seir, and the Moabites, which dwelt in Ar, did unto me. Now, that's kind of stretching it there. They didn't give him permission to pass through, but he also didn't attack them. Until I pass over Jordan into the land which the Lord our God giveth us. But what's the reaction of this king? Sihon would not let us pass through. Why? For the Lord thy God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into thy hand, as appeareth this day. He made his spirit, harden it there means fierce, and the obstinate was courageous. So, you ever seen a little dog go yapping after a really big one? And you're thinking, you're an idiot, right? You got more bark than sense. Right? That's kind of what's going on here, is that he was given more courage than was probably prudent. And so he, bowed up and was not going to let them pass, and he brought his army out, and he proactively attacked them. So it was an unprovoked attack. And so Israel had, a high ground, a moral high ground, as far as they were doing it in self-defense. But the Lord was delivering them into his hands, right? So that he might deliver them into his hand, as appeareth this day. So the Lord said unto me, behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land before thee, to begin to possess it, that thou mayest inherit his land. So Sihon came out against us, he and all his people, to fight at Jahaz. All right. So conquering individual cities is a slow, tedious business. This king gathered all his forces together, all his guys, and they came out for this one big pitched battle. It's a really efficient way if you're going to win. And so the Lord our God delivered him before us, and we smote him and his sons and all his people. So all of his other land, after the army is destroyed, it's just mop up. And so we took all his cities at that time and utterly destroyed the men, the women, and the little ones of every city we left none to remain. Only the cattle we took a prey to ourselves, and the spoil of the cities we took. Looking at it in isolation without context, we could feel like, wow, that's really harsh. Killed the men, the women, the children, all at one time. If you go back to Genesis, when Abraham was promised this land and when it was going to happen, and it was going to be 400-something years down the road after your people have been strangers and ill-abused and everything, he said, but it's not now, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet ripe or not yet come. And so this was a judgment against this people for their idolatry and for their wickedness. God was using Israel to punish them. So it wasn't just random, but it was a sentence. He was executing it. They were also given instructions not to make a league or promises with any of these people, and not to take their daughters or allow their sons to marry, because there would be a path to idolatry. And so the fulfillment of that is why their instructions would be to wipe them out completely. So they obeyed here. All they took was the cattle. But now you've got all these built cities, and so that was part of what is going to become later given to the tribe of Reuben, which is how it's already labeled on this map here. From Aroer, which is by the brink of the river Arnon. So again, rivers don't change, right? So wherever that city was, we know it's on that river. Even unto Gilead, there was not one city too strong for us. The Lord our God delivered all unto us. Only unto the land of the children of Ammon thou camest not, nor unto any place of the river Jabbok, nor unto the cities in the mountains, nor under whatsoever the Lord our God forbade us. So you get up here, you've got this loop of the Jabbok River. Wherever Ammon's border was, God says, nope, don't go any farther, and you're not permitted to. And so you get pretty far north as they were conquering this region in here, which would be known as Gilead. And then when you get to the next chapter, we'll get the second conquest even farther north of what will later become East Manasseh. So this first chunk was split up between Reuben and Gad, and so they're going to take possession on that side of the river. All right. Deuteronomy 2. Just having the map up here and kind of highlighting where I'm looking at.